Hello YouTube, it's Snowflarky coming on today to talk about my Armed Dragon Thunder deck profile. Armed Dragon and the level monsters in general are just some of my absolute favorites from childhood. Soul of the Duelist is a set I opened up a lot of, and the LV monsters are really sick. I like Silent Magician, I like Silent Swordsman, I like Armed Dragon, I like Horus, all sorts of cool ones, and I have tons of casual fun decks for all of them, and of course that would include Armed Dragon, especially since Armed Dragon was given a lot of support in the recent Blazing Vortex set, which has made a pretty fun deck to play that lets me get to use Armed Dragon. And I know it's a fan favorite, so I'm looking forward to showcasing it. Definitely have some interesting choices in here for my dueling environment. Not exactly the most optimal deck profile for standard local tournament scenes, but nonetheless, I will show off what I am playing. Jumping right in with our monsters, let's start by going through the Armed Dragon Thunder core itself. Starting off, I'm playing 3 of the Armed Dragon Thunder LV3. So Armed Dragon Thunder, when it's on the field, its name becomes Armed Dragon LV3, and that is true for all the Armed Dragon Thunders. They become their LV counterpart's name while on the field, and of course in the graveyard. And then you can only use each of all of the effects of Armed Dragon Thunder LV3 once per turn. And essentially, when this card's on the field, you can send one monster from your hand to the graveyard, and then send this card from the field to the graveyard to special summon a level 5 or lower Armed Dragon monster from your hand or deck. Uh, and then, of course, if this card is sent from uh, if this card is sent to the graveyard because of a dragon monster's effect, you can draw one card. So a lot of this deck is in a classic level up mechanic function, is starting from the bottom level and building yourself up to the top. And you do that by discarding a card. And of course, the Armed Dragon Thunder monsters themselves are made so that if you're discarding a Armed Dragon Thunder monster, you're going to get an effect that usually maintains your card advantage, so that you're not actually losing cards just by discarding. You're maintaining and leveling up your dragon, pulling up extra copies of the dragons from the deck. Now, of course, normally you can of course go into the Thunder level 5 or the regular level 5 based on what you want to do. Now, most builds, most optimal builds are not playing the old ones at all. I have done some things different so that I can play a couple copies of the old ones. Since this is a more casual deck, I'm okay with it being a little more casual in that aspect if it means I get to use cool cards that I'm a big fan of. But level 3, the card that starts it all, you definitely want to see this card in your opener, and there's ways to get to it. But if you don't see it, it's not the only way. So, of course, LV3 then levels up to good old Thunder Dragon LV5. So this one is the one that becomes Armed Dragon level 5 when it's on the field or in the graveyard. And like the level 3, it also has the effect where you discard a card to summon a level 7 Armed Dragon monster from your deck. And of course, this one has an effect that if this card is sent to the graveyard to activate a dragon monster's effect, you can add one level 5 or higher wind dragon monster from your deck to your hand. So instead of drawing a card, you get a little bit of a searcher for a level 5 or higher dragon monster. That can be your next Armed Dragon. Usually it is, whichever, or if you want a copy of LV5 to summon on the field, whichever wind dragon monster you need, you can grab it off of Armed Dragon Thunder if you use it to discard and level up your Armed Dragon. Very cool. We definitely like to do it. So that is next in the line. And then, of course, next is Armed Dragon Thunder LV7. This one is the one that becomes level 7 while on the field. Once again, you can discard to special summon a level 10 Armed Dragon monster from your deck. And of course, if this card is the card that is sent to the graveyard to activate a dragon monster's effect, you can add one Armed Dragon card from the deck to your hand. So any Armed Dragon card that includes the spell and trap support this deck has. So whichever one you need, you get it by discarding LV7. So after 5, you go into 7, and then of course the big payoff for the deck. Once you use 7's effect to go into 10, we are playing a singular copy of Armed Dragon Thunder LV10. Now this is the this is the big boss here of the deck. 10-star wind monster with 3,000 attack. If this card was special summoned by the effect of an Armed Dragon monster, it gains the following effects based on its attack power. So 1 or more, its name becomes Armed Dragon level 10. 10 or more, this card can control of the card cannot switch. 100 or more, it cannot be destroyed by battle. And then of course 1,000 or more, once per turn, once per opponent's turn that is, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard to target one other card on the field and destroy it. And then if you do, this card gains 1,000 attack. So it starts at 3,000, pretty big, 4,000, and it goes up. The attack boost is permanent. And then of course, if you get to 10,000 plus attack, once per turn, you can destroy all other cards on the field. So a little bit of a field nuke, and then with a 10,000 attack, you would of course clean up a game. So, it's all about getting Armed Dragon Thunder level 10 on the field and keeping it safe, keeping it protected, destroying things, and gaining its attack. It's a really fun deck, really embodies that leveling up feeling that we are glad to see. So the goal, of course, with those Armed Dragons is to get into your 3. There's also ways to get right into 5 and then just upgrade straight to level 10. Very cool. Next up, for more monsters, I am playing 2 copies of Armed Dragon level 10 white. So this card can't be normal summoned. It has to be special summoned by its own effect, and that effect is that you banish Armed Dragon monsters from your field and or grave whose total levels equal 10. So that can be a 7 and a 3, 2 5s. It could even just be your single level 10 Armed Dragon Thunder. And of course, when you do that, you get to summon this monster for free. It's another 3,000 attack body, so 3,000 attack on a body. That swarms a lot of high attack power to push for OTKs. And then, of course, when this card is summoned, you can add a White Veil from your deck to your hand. Now, I'm not playing White Veil in this build because it's not that great of a card, and even though it is just a card generation, I haven't found it too much worth picking up a White Veil yet, but you can definitely do so if you think it will help you. And then, of course, once per turn, you take no effect damage, which is pretty cool. And then at the start of the damage step, when this card attacks, you can destroy a card on the field. So, pretty cool. You attack, destroy a card on the field, clears fields or problematic, clears monsters to push for an OTK, clears problematic spells or traps that are on the field. Pretty cool. Pretty good payoff to Swarm. So, very much like having copies of Armed Dragon White to further swarm the board. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of the OG Armed Dragon level 5. This card is in there for 2 uses. Mainly, it allows us to get extra bodies on board if we want to use the Armed Dragon Blitz card, which is a card I am choosing to use that we'll see in the spell slot. 2,400 attack, and of course, you can discard. You can also use its effect as a discard outlet for your other Armed Dragon monsters, get their effects off. And of course, that involves discarding a monster to destroy an opponent's monster on their field whose attack is equal to or less than it. So a little restrictive, especially for getting the low dragon popped off, but mostly we just want it on there for the extra body. And importantly, this card is really good for its 2,400 attack, which comes into play with a trap card we are going to use to lock our opponent out of the game, hopefully, later in the deck. And of course, then I am playing 2 copies of Armed Dragon level 7, another target we can go into with Blitz. You know, this one can destroy all face-up monsters on the field with attack less than the card that you discard, which is pretty sick. 2,800 attack, you know, pretty big. More Armed Dragon names to banish for Armed Dragon White. Very cool card. You know, additional firepower to go off with. Next up, to get things moving, I am playing 3 copies of Artillery Catapult Turtle. So this card, you contribute 1 monster to special summon a Gaia the Fierce Knight monster, which we don't have, but what we do have is 1 level 5 dragon monster from your hand or deck. So normal summoning an Artillery Catapult Turtle can right into Armed Dragon level 5 for that, you know, extra damage. And of course, cycling through to level 10. So our Artillery Catapult Turtle, very nice card to see. You know, it's another way to get things going, get right into our Thunder 5, and continue our play from there. Next up, I'm playing 1 copy of Dino Wrestler Pankratops. You know, this is a deck where a lot of times I think about going second. I want to go second. So if your opponent controls monsters and you don't, you can special summon this card for free. It's got 2,600 attack, which is a lot of attack to add on to a battle phase. And then, of course, you contribute a Dino Wrestler monster that includes itself to target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. So, you know, good little 1-for-1 removal, free summon. Pankratops is a very good card. Community knows it. It's a limited card for a reason. Very handy little tool to have. You know, even in here, I think is pretty good. And then next, I am playing a singular copy of Tempest Dragon Ruler of Storms. It took me a while to realize this card was limited, but it's pretty cool that it is. It's a Dragon Ruler, and you know, we're playing lots of dragons, and we're playing wind monsters, so we can easily summon this card for free by banishing 2 wind or dragon monsters from the graveyard. Of course, it's another 2,400 attack body, a 7, which could be good for extra deck plays. You know, just gets a little extra presence on board, which we're pretty happy. You know, Dragon Rulers are powerful cards, and it's the one that we got. So, you know, it does lots of work. You can use its other effects, like discarding this card and a wind monster to add a dragon-type monster. You know, that's pretty good. And of course, that will trigger your Armed Dragon effects if you're discarding the Armed Dragons for a Tempest effect. And then, of course, if this card is banished, you can add a Wind Dragon type monster from your deck to your hand. So pretty good effects. Keep things moving. Extra body on board. Very important, because when we commit to our turn, we're trying to wipe them out in one go. And then last up for our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. You know, everyone knows Ash Blossom, great hand trap. If you don't, it's a really good card that basically when a card or effect is activated on the field while this card is in your hand, you can discard this card and negate the effect. Now, what are those effects? Well, it's whether they add a card from their deck to their hand, they special summon a monster from their deck, or they send a card from their deck to the graveyard. All things that most decks are going to do one of them. So Ash Blossom can negate that effect, halt the deck in its tracks. And hand traps are definitely a good thing to have in an Armed Dragon deck, because this is there's not too much to do going first. It's more about going second and trying to end it all in one swift strike. So hand traps definitely do that. You know, sometimes when I'm trying real hard and going in on the second, I'll also be playing Cyframe Gear Gamma. So, you know, whichever hand trap you need to beat the decks that you're going up against, definitely slot that in. Definitely worth considering. So right now I have been using Triple Ash Blossom. And that is it for our monster lineup. Next, going into our spell cards, I'm starting off by playing 2 copies of Armed Dragon Flash. So this is a pretty good card. I'd probably run 3 if I had 3, but I only pulled 2 of them from my Blazing Vortex box. And while it is a good card, I certainly didn't think it was as good as its price tag, especially when Artillery Catapult Turtle can skip 3 and go right into the 5-step. But Armed Dragon Flash is a quick play spell that lets you special summon a level 3 Armed Dragon monster from your deck in defense position, and of course you can only activate it once per turn. So this card just pulls Armed Dragon Thunder level 3 from the deck, so it's a way to get him out, another copy of it essentially, and lets you start the Armed Dragon climb. So definitely worth playing, you know, while 3 is nice, 2 is perfectly fine, especially since you can't really activate all 3 in a game, and Catapult Turtle alleviates the less copy. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Armed Dragon Lightning, one of their new spells from Blazing Vortex. Essentially, if an Armed Dragon monster you control will be destroyed by card effect, you can send this card to the graveyard instead, which is pretty cool. And you can target 1 Armed Dragon monster you control and activate 1 of these effects. So, you know, just so I read it right, you can either make it gain attack equal to its level times 100. So, you know, level 10, that would be 1,000, level 7, 700. Or you can add an Armed Dragon monster with equal or lower level than it from your graveyard to your hand. So that lets you grab extra discarded Armed Dragon Thunders to use their effects on a following turn. You know, whichever Armed Dragon you need back, gives you some recycling to get more effects off of their discard fodder. Pretty cool. So definitely a cool card. Like to see it. It does good work. And then next, because I am playing the old big dragons, I am playing 2 copies of Armed Dragon Blitz. Armed Dragon Blitz lets you target an Armed Dragon monster you control, and then take 1 monster with the same name from your deck or graveyard, and either add it to your hand or special summon it, ignoring its summoning conditions. And that ignoring its summoning conditions is important because you can use that to pull out level 7, level 5. In a you know, in a traditional kind of more optimal build, you usually play a copy of level 10 to get an additional level 10 after you go into the 10. But level 7, level 4 do quite enough, and level 5 do quite enough. The level 5 one, normally this card is in here to get a regular level 5 on the field, which is pretty important because there's a trap card that combines with that old level 5 quite nicely. That will be quite a pain for your opponent when we get to it. So definitely Armed Dragon Blitz is really cool. One thing to note is that your monster can't attack directly, so make sure you're using that monster to be the one to clear out monsters if you're trying to push for an OTK, because it can't attack directly. And then of course you can't special summon any other monsters except dragon monsters. That's fine. We don't do any of that anyway. So Armed Dragon Blitz, 2 copies. Next up here, I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. This deck is not great at building an extra deck board, so I'm mostly using that extra deck to create card advantage. So Pot of Extravagance, you banish face down randomly 3 to 6 cards from your extra deck, and you draw a card for every 3 that you did. So 6 extra deck cards banished becomes 2 cards, you know, becomes Pot of Greed. And that's pretty nice. Now we can't activate any other drawing effects, which is important because that means you're not going to get the effect of a discarded level 3 Thunder on the turn, but that's okay. Usually not a big deal. We can go elsewhere, get those cards right out the gate, and get those Thunder draws on another turn. Next up, playing 1 copy of Monster Reborn. Plenty of stuff gets thrown in the graveyard, so there's lots of fodder to, you know, just Monster Reborn a monster. And, you know, we want whichever thing has a high attack, get some extra damage in, can be the difference between ending a game or whatnot. So Monster Reborn, glad to have it. Next up, playing 2 copies of Twin Twisters. Oftentimes, we're going to make a big push for game, so if we're up against a deck that has back row, and I face a solid amount of back row decks, we want to have the option to pop those cards before we commit to doing so, and, with back row cleared, we can attack and end for game, and that is pretty worthwhile. And that is it for our spell cards. Last up, we're just looking into our trap cards. Not too many here, only 4 trap cards. We'll start off with the 1 copy of Armed Dragon Thunderbolt. So, of course, Armed Dragon Thunderbolt, you can target an Armed Dragon monster you control. It gains 1,000 attack for each Armed Dragon monster in your graveyard with an equal or lower level than your targeted Armed Dragon, and with different names from each other. So, this can easily give your Armed Dragon level 10 an extra 4, maybe 5,000 attack pretty easily because you've cycled through all the things to get into the grave, which is pretty sweet. Now, your opponent takes no battle damage from from its attacks. So that's kind of important to note. And then, of course, you can banish this card from your graveyard to target an Armed Dragon spell and add it to your hand. So recycles one of the spells that you've gone through and boost your Armed Dragon pretty high to get that attack strength to get it the Armed Dragon level 10 to 10,000, clear the field. So definitely a damage boost and can also clear any problematic high attack cards. So not the greatest trap, but pretty cool enough to be worth 1. Running 1 of it. And then last, I am playing 3 copy of Dragon's Bind. Now this is kind of my spicy card to include in here to kind of serve as maybe a going first win con for the Armed Dragon deck. Dragon's Bind is a card that says activate by targeting a dragon type monster you control with 2,500 or less attack and defense, and then neither player can special summon monsters with attack less than or equal to the original attack of that monster. When that monster leaves the field, destroy this card. So this is kind of the big payoff for doing the Armed Dragon Blitz into level 5 play, because when level 5's out, we'll play Blitz. When Armed Dragon Thunder level 5's out, we'll play Blitz to get the other Armed Dragon level 5 into play. And when that happens, then we can take this Armed Dragon level 5, target it with Dragon's Bind during our opponent's turn, and then they can't special summon anything with 2,400 or less attack. And for a lot of decks that need early special summon combos to build a board and get things started, if they don't have the removal for Dragon's Bind, that will outright win the game. And definitely has just auto won me quite a few games when I pulled this out at Duel Night. So definitely worth playing. Now do note that Dragon's Bind is a going first type card, where a lot of this deck is a going second card. So if you want to commit to full on going second all the time, definitely consider cutting cutting the Blitz strategy. You can find a standard optimal Armed Dragon build on YouTube, but just a little interesting, gives me a tool so that going first isn't incredibly punishing, because if my opponent forces me to go first and they subject themselves to a Dragon's Bind, well, they could just possibly be outright out of the game. Pretty cool card, one of my favorite trap cards. It's very silly, but in decks where it works, it can be very punishing to an uncontrolled player. Last up, we're here to talk about the extra deck. Now, the extra deck isn't anything special. This deck does not make extra deck plays very well, because you don't get a ton of monsters to do elaborate combos, and there's not too many synergies. You do have a decent amount of level 7s you can access, so you can definitely play level 7 XCs like Big Eye and Draco Sack. Definitely things to keep in mind, because you won't see them in here. Instead, I've just opted, especially since I'm playing some trap cards in this kind of build, to just fill my extra deck with good old Waking Dragon targets in case I want to do a Waking the Dragon kind of trap stun oriented build. So they're in this extra deck is one I use a lot, and you'll see in a lot of my videos, so I'll just go over it pretty quickly. Waking the Dragon is essentially a trap card that you would just set, and if your opponent destroyed it for any reason and it's now banished or in your graveyard, you get to special summon a monster from your deck or extra deck for free. And there are some extra deck monsters you can pull out that can be very punishing and in certain matchups just auto win the game. The first off, which being 3 copies of Last Warrior from Another Planet. If your opponent were to destroy Waking the Dragon while there's nothing on the board, you can summon a Last Warrior from Another Planet. Now, neither player can summon monsters. When you summon this card, it does destroy monsters you control. So important to note that if that happened while you had monsters, you would lose them. But of course, your Armed Dragon monsters you could possibly protect with Lightning, the continuous spell. But if your opponent can't summon monsters, you can just punch them with Last Warrior until they lose the game. Next up, I'm running 2 copies of Naturia Extereo. This is for matchups where decks are very dependent on their spell and trap cards, because Naturia Extereo can just essentially negate spell and traps. You just banish a card from your grave and then send the top card of your deck to the graveyard, and it's not once per turn. So ritual decks, they can't use ritual spells. Trap decks, anything that really needed their spell and trap cards, Extereo can just blow them out of the water. I would play 3 if I had it, but I don't, so I feel it was 1 copy of Naturia Beast, which is usually just as good in most matchups because it negates spells for 2 cards on the top of your deck. And, not too many decks are running trap cards. In my duel circle, there's a decent amount of trap cards because it's very casual, but Naturia Beast will do well for you in normal settings. Next, playing 1 copy of Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. It's a 3,500 attack monster that is unaffected by card effects. That makes it very hard to deal with. Your opponent's got to beat over it or have a kaiju for it. If they don't have either, they can't do anything about this card. They may just lose the game. I'd play 3 if I had it, but I only have 1, and I have some budget substitutes that haven't made me need to get it yet. Next up is Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. 4,500 attack monster, can't be destroyed or targeted by card effects, and of course has the ability to, instead of attack, destroy a card on the field. So 4,500 attack, very powerful, definitely worth considering. The inability to be targeted or destroyed is pretty good, not as good as being unaffected, but still pretty good in a lot of circumstances that, if you know it'll be enough, the extra attack power is very warranted. So 3 copies of that. Next up, playing 3 copies of Yugioh Mech Final Sigma. It's a 3,000 attack monster that's unaffected by card effects other than Mech cards if you summon it in the extra monster zone, which in this deck you'll normally have free, so you can take advantage of that. And 3,000 unaffected, pretty good. And of course, if it does battle damage through battle with a monster to your opponent, that battle damage is doubled. Very cool boss monster, very fun to summon off of Waking the Dragon. And then next up, 2 one-off fillers. If there was nothing left, you can go into them. One is Simon, the Great Moral Leader, 3,000 attack monster that is unaffected by monster effects. And of course, Goki, the Giant Ogre, which cannot be destroyed by battle and is unaffected by the activated effects of monsters with attack less than this. So both are just unaffected by monster effects as opposed to being unaffected by all card effects. So, if these were the only ones left, you could go into them. Of course, if you have more copies of Ultimate Falcon, definitely play that. If you have copies of Blackwing Full Armor Master, of course play that. But just little budget small substitutes that I have on hand. And that is it for the extra deck. So that is it for my Arm Dragon deck profile. Very fun deck. Cool that we can use Arm Dragon Thunder in a more modern sense now, which is very fun. In this deck, you can definitely build it to be all in on the going second, which if you're looking for the highest win rate, I would recommend doing, because if you can stop your opponent, this deck can easily pump out enough attack power to wipe out an opponent on a second turn. So if you can just stop them from building a board and then get yours set, start your summoning off of it on your turn, you can usually close out a game pretty easily. Just flood the game with high attack power monsters, cool looking dragons. It's pretty fun. The Dragon's Bind is super fun and spicy way to just shut out other decks. And yes, very happy with it. Fan favorite. Good to have something to do with it. And I hope you all enjoy it out there too. Big fan of LV monsters. I really hope they got more support down the pipeline for all of them. I already play decks for Silent Swordsman, Silent Magician, Mystic Swordsman level 6, and even Horus. But any boost to those would always be very welcome. So let me know, what's your favorite LV monster? Are you a big fan of Armed Dragon? Let's talk about it and discuss. And with that said, thanks for tuning in. Hope you all enjoy it, and I'll catch you in the next one.